Oh my gosh,
Woo!
Carlos, sorry about that. And anybody else watching? Oh, maybe Carlos is gone. Anywho, we had a little technical difficulties literally 5 seconds before we were going to go live, so we had to address that real quick. So
Sounded all wrong.
on a podcast episode later on, you have no idea what we're talking about. So this is so cool. It's a difficulty that is now in the void and has no relevance to you at all. But thanks for joining us for another double take where we talk about something that is related to the previous week's episode. Last week's episode was Ben-Hur. I am, of course, joined by Derek. And Derek, can you please explain why we chose today's movie?
Yes, I can, sir. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, to Double Take. We are talking about today's movie, Gladiator, because on After the Credits last week, Tuesday, we discussed Ben-Hur. And as many people pointed out online in various different places, they're very, very similar films, almost definitely related thematically and or visually and production wise and technically and all that good stuff. However, one is definitely absent some Jesus, whereas the other one has secret Jesus all throughout. So today's film is Gladiator. It's blurry. There we
Dun,
go.
dun, 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 dun.
Does that show up backwards or does it mirror it?
Yeah, it's fine. I see it
Okay.
normal. Yeah.
I see it backwards, so just making sure. So let's start off kind of high level, and I think it behoove us to just kind of recap where the similarities are in coming from Ben-Hur to
Mhm.
Gladiator. So Elon, I'll toss it back to you real quick, but just quickly compare Gladiator and Ben-Hur in whatever way you feel is appropriate.
Well, the fact that they are both taking place around the time of Christ, Roman times, the Romans are definitely in power, and we follow a protagonist who is well regarded, who is well known, and people like him, and he's got a name for himself. And then something happens, and he is totally wronged, usually involving his family to some degree. And then he is sent away in exile, just because the people in power don't want him around anymore because they think he's tainting he's killing the vibe, man. He's just killing the vibe.
Yeah.
And then after years and years of being in exile, he comes back to enact his revenge.
Like a phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah. So, getting all strong and stuff, rowing boats, getting all ripped, and then coming back to be like, hey, you thought I was going to be gone forever. Well, guess what? I'm back, and you're going to get what's due.
Yeah, it's a good revenge story too. Both of them are good revenge stories. Ben-Hur reminds me a little bit more of the Count of Monte Cristo in that it's a close confidant and friend that betrays him,
Yes.
whereas Gladiator is more of the jealous, insecure. I guess kind of brother. There's the line in there where he said, did we
Yeah.
not both love my father? Doesn't that make us brothers? No,
Mhm.
it doesn't make you brothers. It makes you a whiny little biatch and
Yeah.
makes Maximus sweet. Yeah, I'm curious because Ben-Hur takes place while Jesus is alive, whereas Gladiator takes place almost 200 years after
Yeah.
Jesus's birth. There's a little bit of that dichotomy, a little bit of that difference between the two movies. But as I was watching Gladiator, and I've seen Gladiator before, I had never seen Ben-Hur, but watching them kind of almost back to back, yes, there was a few days apart, but Ben-Hur was still very fresh in my mind
Mhm.
as we were watching Gladiator. And I couldn't help but in multiple scenes in the movie, just seeing that Gladiator is very clearly paying homage to, or homage, however you want to say it, but it's an homage to Ben-Hur in many different ways. Obviously, the plot, the story, the time period kind of works well for that. But I think there's a lot of sections where it's very intentionally kind of calling back to Ben-Hur.
Mhm.
And I really don't think, although I will say just in summary that I think Gladiator hit much better for me. I think it's a better movie in nearly every way when compared to Ben-Hur.
Yes.
I do think that Gladiator could not have accomplished what it did if it wasn't for Ben-Hur.
Mhm.
So it's really, really cool to see how Ben-Hur kind of did its thing back in the day, what they were able to accomplish both technically, story-wise, and scope-wise. I mean, I don't really know if there's an epic that preceded Ben-Hur in quite the way that it was presented, whereas
Yeah.
Gladiator is definitely one of the standout epics of, the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. It came out right
Yeah.
in 2000. So,
Right.
um, I just, I think that where Ben-Hur walked, Gladiator kind of ran, is
Yeah.
what I'll say.
I would also say that I think Gladiator, I don't think Gladiator would have been made without the success of Braveheart. Because I think that
Yes.
was kind of the jumping off point where it's like, oh, we're going to do 3-hour epics now. Okay, what else is there? What other stories could we gather from the zeitgeist or just from past eras? And yeah, they maybe somebody just, some producer just kind of threw it on the table like, well, I mean, Ben-Hur's got some pretty cool themes. Let's see what we can do with something surrounding that. And then lo and behold, because I don't know, I'm not sure if there was another notable epic between Braveheart and Gladiator, but I could be totally wrong. And like people might be screaming at me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too. I can't think of anything that has remained kind of in the zeitgeist or whatever in pop culture like
Mhm.
Gladiator and Braveheart. So there might have been some movies that were released that were mildly successful or whatever. But
Yeah.
I feel like Gladiator still to this day, I still hear people reference it. I still hear people talk about it. You
Mhm.
see it kind of all over places, and not to put too fine a point on it, but even the themes of both movies, but especially Gladiator, I hear them pop up online in commentary all the time as
Yeah.
people are just comparing kind of the fall of the Roman Empire and the differences between even like politically in various countries, things that are happening, and some of the characters that you kind of see in these movies are pop up and are compared to people and politicians and even certain figures all the time. So
Mhm.
um, it's interesting to me that I don't hear more about Ben-Hur and some of those characters or some of the themes in Ben-Hur, but I hear them about Gladiator all the time, and I just think I would attribute that to the time difference of when the two were
Yeah.
released, and maybe Ben-Hur will just kind of keep fading more and more in terms of like the references because there are other movies that have come since then. But like we talked about in After the Credits, it's just hard to ignore that Ben-Hur was 1959, right?
Yeah.
Can't believe I'm forgetting this so soon, but 1959 and what they were able to do and how much it pushed the production of all that stuff,
Mhm.
just in, I think you mentioned it last time, there was just like a push for all these movies based on like these religious stories, Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, well, I guess, I don't know if Lawrence of Arabia counts as a religious story, but
Oh,
these
yeah.
big
But yeah.
epics that kind of had like that religious threading to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to me that this movie is able to tell that story um, almost without those. There's a couple references here and there, to just Caesar being viewed as like a god or whatever. But
Mhm.
for the most part, it's absent kind of that religiosity, and really the only time that they talk about religion is in context of Caesar and Rome and the fall and where it's going and things like that. So
Mhm.
very cool. What did you think about the acting in Gladiator compared to Ben-Hur?
Well, definitely wasn't as melodramatic as far as like compared to Charlton Heston's
Yeah.
acting.
My God.
Yeah. I wouldn't I don't want to betray my people. But it's like yeah, I mean there's no comparison because
Yeah.
you've got Charlton Heston being very melodramatic and then you've got Russell Crowe being very stoic, quiet, you know, obviously until he needs to fight, whatever. But yeah, I don't know about you, but this is kind of a sidebar, but I've always thought that Russell Crowe is a whisperer. he
Hmm.
he talks very quietly in almost all of his roles. It's just something he does. So this is no exception, but
Yeah.
but it also kind of fits with this particular character. So kudos to him for doing that. But yeah, it's just kind of his thing, but it definitely fits with Maximus.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with that too.
yeah.
I do think it's, you know, notwithstanding the amount of nominations or awards that each movie got or whatever, I think that Russell Crowe is a much better actor than Charlton Heston. I feel like Charlton Heston, you kind of to your point, if you look at like the range of dynamism, I guess, in their performances, Russell Crowe
Mhm.
is able to do like the stoic, silent, broody type, which I think fits more with the character of Maximus. But then when he needs to
Yeah.
be loud or he needs to be kind of, I don't want to say exuberant because there's not really anything happy going on that he really celebrates in this movie. Whereas Charlton Heston, it was like every line has that very macho man. And not the wrestler, but like we had talked about after the credits how you've got your John Waynes, you've got your Charlton Hestons, you've got kind of your other guys. Oh no, I lost Elon, so I'll just talk to you guys now. I feel like the Charlton Heston kind of chewing the scenery and just being very melodramatic or overly dramatic, I should say, just didn't sit as well with me as uh, Russell Crowe's performance in Gladiator. So much bigger fan of that. I also think that although I really, really appreciated Marcella's, I forget his name, Stephen Boyd. I appreciated Stephen Boyd's performance as Marcella. I think that Joaquin Phoenix just really one of my favorite performances of all time for a villainous character because the
Mhm.
entire movie I'm just hoping and praying for this guy to get his just desserts. He's
Yeah.
such a whiny little, nepotistic crybaby, and yet in the one scene where he's kind of like defacing Marcus Aurelius's statue kind of in
Right.
the crypt, I actually felt bad for him. I felt bad for Commodus because Marcus Aurelius tells him previously before he dies in the scene where he's dying, he's like, "Hey, it's not your fault. I'm the one that failed you.
As a father, yeah.
You're not the person, you're not the right person to take over in my stead. You're not the right person to lead Rome. And that's not your fault, it's my fault." And all I could think in that scene where he's chopping up that statue is, yeah, but that doesn't make him feel any better. That doesn't fix his situation.
Right.
It doesn't, it's like when people are abused or like just really traumatized by their parents, and then later on their parents kind of get their shit together and are like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm not that person anymore. I've grown, I've changed, I've reformed, I've recovered, whatever." And it's like
Mhm.
that doesn't take away the trauma. It doesn't take away the scarring
Yeah.
from the child that had to experience that. So it's kind of like, okay, great, dad. And yet at the same time, it also doesn't excuse any of his behavior. So it still,
Mhm.
it's just, I've never, I've never really gotten over the fact that every time I watch this movie, I hate him, and then this time I like felt bad for him in a small way. Didn't
Yeah.
take away any of my hate for him, but it just kind of made me sympathize with him a tiny little bit. I was like,
Right.
"Ugh,
Right.
this guy's rough."
I know. I saw this. I came back from an audio expo in Chicago, and I watched this on the plane on the way back. I actually watched it because they've.
You watched the
Uh,
extended version, right?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because I do want to
Um,
talk about that a little bit, the extended versus
yeah.
theatrical
Yeah.
release. So, okay, sorry.
But it's at the same time. I think I remember which ones were actually in the extended and not in the
Mhm.
theatrical version. Yeah, because some of the scenes were definitely like the pacing was felt a little bit off because just added backstory, which I thought was cool. But yeah, you could tell that it wasn't like the
It's not
tight,
necessary.
yeah, the very
Mhm.
tight theatrical pace that it had when those scenes were not in there.
Mhm.
Um, but I actually had it because they've got little phone and iPad holders on the backs of airline seats. So I just plopped my phone on onto that thing and
You
watched
watched
it.
Gladiator on your phone?
But I
For
listened to it
shame.
with my headphones on. So at least I had good sound.
Nice.
Because if yeah, watching it on a phone with the phone speakers, come on. Um,
Nice.
so, but even then, it's like only a foot and a half, 2 feet away from my face anyway. So it's not like it was teeny tiny.
Just move it closer.
Yeah. So it's like, it's still
Elan's on the
fairly
plane
immersive.
like, wow, this screen is
I
huge.
know, virtual reality.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, even on my phone, it looked amazing.
Yeah.
It looked gorgeous.
Yeah.
Um, the cinematography, there were just so many shots where I literally had to pause it. I'm like, that's cool.
I was
That
surprised how little of the CG I noticed as I was
mhm,
watching it because there's a ton of matte paintings, there's a ton of CG
yeah,
extensions of the Coliseum, all the different
right.
arenas and stuff like that. Most of it they had to do, just one section like the Coliseum. They actually built the first two levels and then the theater box or whatever, but that's it. All the sides are extensions, and they basically when they were trying to film it to look practical
Mhm,
in those scenes, they just faced, all those shots are facing in that direction. They're facing
right.
in that stuff. But I didn't really notice. There was a couple times I guess that it was like only because I knew that that's how they did it that I was like, oh yeah, you can tell that that's, there's a couple flyby shots and stuff where you can tell that it's like, I wouldn't say stock footage, but there's like digital versions of the characters or whatever. There's like a
Yeah.
scene where there's some chariots roaming around, and even though it's like a flyover, the perspective on the horses never changes, so you can tell like
Right.
it's not exactly part of the shot.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I would have caught on to that if I didn't know that that was digitally done.
Yeah.
So kudos to the
There
production team for that.
there were a couple shots that were pretty glaringly obvious that they were green screen.
Hmm.
Particularly like if there was, some shot where they're standing on somewhat of a balcony kind of area, and the city of Rome is behind them, and it's like
Hmm.
sunset. So you've got the sun behind their heads and everything is cast in this kind of orange glow. And shots like that, I was like, oh yeah, that's green screen. It's obviously they didn't build an entire city just so they could have that in the backdrop. So
Actually, they rebuilt all. No, I'm just kidding. They rebuilt the entire city of Rome.
in a
Historically
day,
accurate
right?
Rome. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, that's funny. That's clever. I like that. What other performances stood out to you, acting wise?
I really liked uh what's his face? Proximo.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked his involvement in the whole story. I really liked his arc and just how just the relationship between Proximo and Maximus, and how he's kind of just giving him a shot and then realizing who he's actually dealing with, that he used to be a general for the Roman, army. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh geez. But yeah, I don't know. It just I really enjoyed that dynamic that they had between each other. And I really like the introduction to Proximo, how
Mm-hmm.
that guy comes up to him and he just grabs him by the balls and he's like, you sold me giraffes and they're not mating, so you sold me some queer giraffes. And like, just that's a pretty powerful introduction to anyone, to any
Yeah.
kind of character. um Literally grabbing somebody by the balls. So metaphorically, he's not gonna he's definitely going to do that because he's just that kind of person. And you have to be that way if you're in that kind of business, training these gladiators and really just showing them off and being a gladiator pimp, really.
Yeah, well, even
um,
that, I mean, that whole scene is basically him grabbing the guy by the balls multiple times. They're
mhm.
they're bartering for the purchase of the slaves and the camels and the horses and all the whole 9 yards. And he's like, 5,000 or whatever. And he's like, nah, I'm out of here. And he's like, wait.
Yeah.
Like he's
Exactly.
got him by the balls the whole time.
Hmm. Hmm.
I actually really, I agree with you because I think Proximo's the actor. Wait, who's the actor? Oliver Reed. I thought
Yeah.
his Proximo was fantastic. Because even from like a character development standpoint, they don't get that much time to develop Proximo as a
Right.
character. But even the fact that like one of my favorite interactions between him and Maximus is when he sees the tattoo of the Legion on
Hmm.
his arm. So he recognizes, like, he knows what that means. He knows who he
Yeah.
is, and he doesn't care. Like,
Yeah.
what a great moment, because then it's like, bring him on anyway. He's going to be my slave. He's going to be a gladiator. Let's send him out to die. And then, like you said, later, he having that revelation of like, whoa, this isn't just some legionnaire. This
Because
is
he
like
calls him a
the
deserter.
guy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the guy. And then it's like, ooh.
Hmm. But I thought it was
Um,
cool too how Proximo was talking about how he used to be a gladiator too.
mhm.
So it's not just some businessman, some snarky, slimy greaseball business guy. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I used to do the exact same thing you did. So I kind of know how it is,
Yeah.
to come from that kind of background.
Yeah, they have a bunch of those like callback moments where, with the stuff happening to Maximus, you're kind of like, did that kind of stuff also happen to Proximo? Because obviously he survived too. He's still
Hmm.
alive. He's still doing this. So
Yeah.
what does that mean for it? I also, this time for some reason more than others, I really want to call out David Hemmings as Cassius, because his eyebrows, the crazy eyebrows, are like
Right.
so noticeable on him. But I genuinely don't think that character would have worked as well without his voice. That like
Yeah.
crazy cool raspy, and it's so cool because it's just very grovelly and blah, 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 blah. But then when
Yeah.
he gets very loud, it just has like this tone to it that is
Right.
like, it's just like very rumbly and very the closest I can compare it is the roar of the tigers when they release all those tigers on the
Hmm.
chains. It kind of has that like roar to it. It's so good. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Well, that's also a testament to the sound design and just the audio in general. Because
Mm-hmm.
I did get the 4K combo many years ago, and I reviewed it on my own channel with Gladiator and Braveheart. Just there's a 2-pack with
Double
those two
disc.
movies. Yeah. So I reviewed both of them and talked about it on my channel, and that was one of the things that impressed me the most about the audio in general was the Colosseum scenes. I mean, yeah, it's extremely difficult to do the sound design for scenes like that, because there's so many elements going on at the same time.
Yeah, well, like we talked about in Ben-Hur, the whole chariot scene was filmed silently. No
Yes,
sound at all. Everything was added in post.
exactly. And what impressed me the most about the Coliseum scenes in Gladiator is the crowd. I remember, because at that time I had a pretty decent surround sound setup when I reviewed it, and that just blew me away. I was like, you really feel like you're there in the Coliseum because they mixed in the crowd noises so well.
Yeah,
So
it's
the
staged very
cheers, the
well.
boos, the yeah, everything. And just like random specific lines you could hear from certain audience members, as well as Cassius when he's doing his whole spiel. Like, yeah, that was one sound design element that I thought that they nailed, to really sell just how large and performative those kinds of situations are.
I
And
agree. Yeah, in general, the sound design in this movie is awesome. And one time that it stuck out to me very notably was, again, the scene where Commodus is kind of hacking and slashing at the statue of Marcus Aurelius, because it has this. I don't know why, it was like so satisfying to me. But he pulls the sword off the statue and he's kind of like looking at it, and then he just whips it like at the throat of the statue, and it makes this very
Mhm.
nice, satisfying like ding right as
Right.
the sword hits, and then he kind of like scrapes it off, and just that little scrape stuck with me as I was watching it, because I mean, I knew, again, I've seen the movie before, but I knew that he was gonna start like hacking it up and it was gonna start
Yeah.
making all these noises. But just the way that those sounds were mixed in amongst everything, with his grunting and his kind of like, because it's like a like grunting and whining and moaning and crying kind of all at the same time. It's like this
Right.
flurry of emotions that you can tell. And the sound design just like really, I don't know, it really like sucks you into the focus of what that scene is, and just him just going to town on it after hearing those very like just clean, just shing, ding.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really well done. Um, I forgot where my train of thought was going with that.
One thing actually want to hit back on, as far as the cinematography is concerned, is that it's got this really cool balance of having very dramatic shadows and,
Mhm.
just a very cinematic look, but still being well lit enough that it's just very cinematic. It's made for the big screen. Because I'll tell you, it's just interesting, because on my way back watching this on the plane, when I finished Gladiator, I was listening to The Martian on audiobook. But as I'm listening to it, I actually see a few rows ahead and to the right, somebody is watching Game of Thrones on their iPad.
Oh
And
goodness.
like, this is kind of the same vibe, you could say, because it's in the medieval times.
Yeah, lo-fi, low-tech kind of situations.
Yeah, and like, but it was interesting because I'm watching I'm watching Game of Thrones, and it is so dark. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you could just so many silhouetted shots, so many shots where you could just barely see like the half of their face. And I know that was a choice. I know that's kind of the vibe they wanted to go for as far as the lighting is concerned and just the cinematography in general. But it's like, I don't know, for the first time, because I went directly from Gladiator to Game of Thrones, at least being able to see that. And it kind of made me not appreciate Game of Thrones as much, at least just for a second. I mean, I still love it as a whole, but at the same time, I was like, well, they were able to pull this off and have it look amazing with these truly dramatic shadows, but also these like rays of light you could see, or you could clearly see half of their face, and like just everything about the cinematography with Gladiator was superb. So what is it about Game of Thrones why did they decide to just go so dark all the time? And I can only imagine it's because they knew it was going to be made for TV as opposed to being on the big screen. And maybe they could just get away with that. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I feel like there's a specific scene that I think a lot of people complain about in Game of Thrones, which I kind of agree with you. I thought it was a choice that they made. I just don't think it was the right one. But there's like a scene, right before when they're fighting the Night King and all the people. You're supposed to see like a pitch black battlefield, and then they're supposed to like light up the torches, so you see all that stuff. And I think the thing that's missing from that is like the contrast, because the fire didn't light them up. And again, I think that they tried to do that intentionally. It wasn't as successful. When the fire lights up, like, you don't see that brightness. If you're going to show pitch black darkness, at some point you need to show the opposite, I think, because otherwise it doesn't really feel like that. And I'm not saying they have to like blast the exposure on every single other scene that's not dark, but there needs to be some kind of contrast of that balance. It would have been great if when they showed like the Night King amidst all the snow, when they show north of the wall and stuff, you got a lot of snow, there's a lot of that soft light, you can really brighten that up, as we saw in Fargo.
Right.
And yet they don't really do that. They still there's a couple scenes, where they do that, but like they run through forests and stuff, and the forests are dark, despite the fact that it's supposed to be in the exact same area north of the wall. It doesn't really get that contrast to me. It feels like everything is shifted into kind of those darker tones. And so then when they were talking, or when they were planning on filming those dark scenes, they kind of like painted themselves into a corner, because the whole show has been kind of dark. They haven't really expanded out to that light. So now they have a scene where they need to show pitch black to really get that contrast. And it's like, you've crushed those colors so much into the dark ranges, you're stuck there now. And then it doesn't really work for the rest of that scene, because everything's in darkness and all the characters are dark. And then when they push back, Gladiator kind of starts you off. The very first shot is really that, Maximus's hand going
his
through
hand,
and just a lot of that is in this like bright field. And I mean, just thematically, Gladiator kind of uses the light and dark in those themes of like when stuff is really at its lowest, it's at its darkest, and when Maximus is kind of like on his rise. And you see when the one of the characters talks about how his name has power. It's more powerful. And then Connie Nielsen's Lucilla comes in, and she's like, your name, that you hear your name or whatever. That's when it's like the brightest, when you see those big Coliseum shots with Maximus in the middle, the scene where he pulls that helmet off. It's like nice, bright, open. It's like, this is this is his revenge. His vengeance is coming up. That line, that I am Maximus Decimus Meridius, blah blah blah, is one of the brightest shots in the movie. And it's like,
yeah, dude. And this was like just some random episode of Game of Thrones too. It wasn't, because I know exactly the episode that you're talking about, where it's just basically complete darkness. And even then, I guess this is a chance to, push for physical media too. But if you don't own Game of Thrones on physical media and on 4K or Blu-ray or whatever, 4K especially, because you've got it in HDR, but that particular scene, it's still dark, but it is better, because when it originally aired on HBO, it was only in 1080p, and it's streaming. So your black levels are not going to be that great, and it's going to look terrible. So I remember exactly the backlash on social media that was like, what is this? I can't see a thing.
Yeah.
So,
because the funny thing about that is when they aired it the first time, we watched it in HDR. And or at least it, I didn't realize how dark it was until I started seeing screenshots from people of what it looked like. Number one, on a normal television, it was dark AF. But even on different manufacturers, different panel types, like even TVs that were HDR, it was still, again, they weren't using that range. They had it
Yeah.
encoded to use HDR's range, but they weren't making use of the actual expanded color range. And so it was like, I don't know. It was just a very, very weird thing. And I agree. Like that's this, I think, the worst of the scenes that showcase that. But you're
Mhm.
right. The whole show, because I remember there's a scene in the what's that guy's name? The Royal Septon. They had somebody like in a prison or something. It's like,
Mhm.
damn, it's really dark in this prison. And I think like the one prison shot that's lit up is with the three snake girls or whatever. That's like the only shot that you could see, and it's like, really, guys? Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's
I
pretty
mean,
crushed.
not to get off on too much of a Game of Thrones tangent, but I just thought that was interesting how that just happened to be in front of me after I watched Gladiator, and
Yeah.
just the juxtaposition. Like it was, yeah, just some random episode. It's like,
Hmm.
man, that is just it looks nothing like Gladiator.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just because like I was just so impressed with, yeah, just those so many shots in Gladiator where you've got these gigantic columns and people just kind of sitting around, and you've got the sunlight coming through one side, and the shadows are just cast to one side, and everything is just gorgeous, man. Like
Hmm.
I
Well,
was
not to fawn too much over Ben-Hur, but that's actually one of the things that I thought Ben-Hur did, because even, with Ben-Hur back then, they had much less control. I mean, everything was being done manually,
Mhm.
at that point. So they're lighting the sets. There's a bunch of nighttime scenes in Ben-Hur where it's like very clearly a set, and there's, a matte painting kind of in the background or whatever. And it's still like the difference tonally between the scenes that are outside in the bright daylight, like the chariot scene, versus some of those like more intimate scenes, or the scenes, where him and Marcella are talking indoors or whatever. Like, it's a really
Yeah.
good contrast, really good lighting, and that was all stuff that they did, in the moment, manually on these sets. Um, so yeah, very you know, very good callback. And again, Gladiator just kind of improved on that, in my opinion, in so many ways,
Yeah.
to really capture that. The look, man, the look is what's impressive.
Did you ever see Gladiator 2 that came out last year?
I did, and honestly, when they and like announced it and everything, I wasn't that like
Yeah.
excited to see it. I was like, they didn't need to make a second Gladiator. Honestly,
Yeah.
if they hadn't named it Gladiator 2, I think I probably would have uh received that a little bit better, because I
Yeah.
didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. Some of the CG stuff was a little weird with the monkeys and all that.
I actually
So
never saw it.
oh, oh,
So,
oh.
yeah, because I was curious if you had.
Yeah, it's not as good. I definitely prefer the first Gladiator in nearly every way, but it
Yeah.
it, it was fine. It was fine. I didn't think it was bad. It was maybe like a 6 out of 10 for me.
Was that also directed by Ridley Scott?
No, it was directed by, just look. You start typing, look it up,
Yeah.
because I can't think of it at the moment. But no, it's
No, it
produced
was.
by Ridley Scott. No way. What?
It says director Ridley Scott.
Gladiator 2?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Unless IMDb is lying to me.
No, it's definitely not lying to you. Dang. I honestly, I wouldn't have put that together. There's a lot
Yeah.
of differences. There's enough differences in Gladiator 2 to where, I mean, clearly I thought it was done by somebody differently. I thought it was produced by Ridley Scott but not directed. So if it
Yeah.
is, I
So
feel like his sensibilities changed a little bit then.
I know, with that being said, does Ridley Scott have what it takes anymore, or is he just getting a little too old? Because I don't know if you
Expound on that.
saw it. Didn't he also direct Napoleon
I
with
did not see Napoleon,
with
so I
Joaquin
don't know.
Phoenix? Because I never saw it either. But again, this was just another uh, epic directed by Ridley Scott.
Okay.
Also, what Joaquin Phoenix is Napoleon, so it was another collaboration between those two. But I heard a lot of mixed things. Just overall, it didn't really get that much great fanfare. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the last thing I saw by Ridley Scott was Raised by Wolves. And I loved that show. I was sad that they canceled
Oh,
that.
right. That HBO one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super cool. And then
It was.
I saw parts of House of Gucci, and that was like fine, not really as epic. So I don't know if that counts as a like Ridley Scott kind of Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah, right.
But Napoleon, I did not see Napoleon. Although I probably should, because Joaquin Phoenix again, it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And A Martian, I really like The Martian, and that's Ridley Scott, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
But gosh, how old is The Martian now?
2015, so 11 years.
Oh, wow. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 2015.
True. I did enjoy The Martian. And I'm enjoying listening to it at the moment too. I'm not done with it yet, but obviously I started listening to The Martian because I had just listened to Project Hail Mary and saw Project Hail Mary in the theater. So I think a lot of other people are doing that too, who haven't gotten around to listening to The Martian.
I read Project Hail Mary when it came out, thought it was excellent, and thought Project Hail Mary was excellent. Like we saw it at the IMAX, and absolutely beautiful, but nice. not a Ridley Scott movie, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Ridley Scott's still got it. My issue with Ridley Scott is less in his directorial stuff and more in like, I feel like some of the other decisions, like with the Alien films that he's done since. Did he do Romulus or no? He didn't do Romulus. He did.
He only did the first one, I thought.
Prometheus.
Oh, yes.
Prometheus.
Right.
I thought when I saw Prometheus, I was like, oh, Ridley Scott's lost it. Like I just, there's so many things in Prometheus that I was just, like taken aback by. The plot wise and stuff was not great or whatever. And even, you know, as a visual spectacle, it was just like a little disappointing to me. But I don't know. Since then, he's done a ton of stuff that I still dug. Again, Raised by Wolves and The Martian were pretty cool. What was the one after Prometheus? He did another Alien movie after Prometheus, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh, yeah. The Alien Covenant? Is that what it was?
Yes, probably. That was another one that, and again,
just 2017.
Okay, so I didn't know if that was like a, you know, if he just produced it, but somebody else directed it. But that was another one that I was like, maybe his Alien stuff isn't up to par with the it used to be. But overall, his films are fine.
He did direct Alien Covenant as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
As I was watching Gladiator, I was trying to think of like if it had never been made and it was thought about being made today. One thing that hit me almost immediately is how strikingly similar Proximus, or the actor who plays Proximus, looks like Javier Bardem. So I could probably see Javier Bardem as Proximus, or Proximo. Sorry.
Yeah.
If they were to do it now. But man, it took me a long time. I still don't know. Like I was kind of racking my brain over. I'm like, I really don't know who Maximus could be. Like,
well, Ryan Gosling, obviously.
I mean, honestly, he did kind of jump in my mind, but I was like, no.
But
not just for a second.
Not the right vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not the right vibe. I mean, not saying that Ryan Gosling couldn't get there just because he is such a phenomenal actor, but still, as an audience member, I don't think a lot of the audience would take it seriously if he were to play someone like Maximus. But yeah, somebody that young, at least when Russell Crowe in the year 2000 or 1999 when it was being made, like somebody Russell Crowe's age at that time, who now could do something like that, who would have that same gravitas and command of the screen. I, yeah, I'm still at a loss. But as far as Commodus, I was thinking maybe like Paul Dano.
Ooh. Well, the guy in Gladiator 2, I actually thought that those casting choices were decent. And they were different characters, so you kind of like got away with them being similar to Commodus and Maximus.
Mhm.
But I thought those were two pretty decent casting choices for Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
They kind of got the because in the Gladiator 2, like the quote unquote baddies are or siblings or twins or whatever, and so they kind of made them different, but those
Mhm.
were good choices. Those were good choices. I feel like I don't know enough of the like up and coming actors and actresses that
Yeah.
are around nowadays. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing, I think the most range and the best acting is actually on TV or on the show format as opposed to the movie format. I
Mhm.
feel like with films they tend to rely on the same actors or the same kind of pool of talent
Yeah.
repeatedly for some of these bigger movies. So
Right.
I don't know who I would say. I would love to see a fan cast of a modern version of Gladiator. However, I don't want another new Gladiator. I don't want a remake,
Yeah,
or anything like that,
for sure.
because it's a time capsule that I'm cool with sealing up and just enjoying it
Yeah.
as it is. Again,
We
I didn't even need a Gladiator 2. So to me,
yeah.
Gladiator 2 is a completely separate film, separate franchise that is only connected in name only.
Mhm. I mean, you make it sound like it was almost as if it were a reboot.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, the story is just so. I mean, I guess in general the vibes are pretty similar. It
mhm.
just I don't know. It just didn't need to be Gladiator, you
Yeah.
know. It it felt like too much or too often. I feel like if you have a cool story to tell, like one of my favorite quotes is from like Robert Zemeckis talks about how with Back to the Future, when they were creating Back to the Future, it's in his contract for the movie that they cannot make a reboot, they cannot make a sequel, they cannot make any more Back to the Future properties without his okay or his say so.
Mhm.
And he talks about it. I've heard other directors say similar things, or other actors or other talent say similar things. But the gist is like, if it's the right story, we'll bring it back. I just haven't heard the right story.
Yeah.
I haven't
Right.
heard the right continuation. So as far as he's concerned, there's no reason to revisit those characters or that world or that story, yada yada yada. I think the same thing applies to some of these movies. Like
Mhm.
Gladiator 2 would have been fine as just kind of a generic, gladiator type movie, Roman
Yeah.
hero in the Colosseum, that kind of thing. It just didn't need to be Gladiator 2 because it's not really related to it. I mean, yes, there is some relation to it because some of the characters are like the grandchildren or children of characters from the first one, but it's like they didn't need to
Oh,
be. They don't need to
yeah,
be, you
exactly.
know. I forget what other movie it was, but it was kind of like when somebody mentioned that there's like a Star Trek or Star Wars movie. It's like it didn't need to be that, you know. That it would have been fine. I'm trying to think because there's a specific movie that I'm thinking of where
Mhm.
it's like it would have been fine as just generic whatever movie, but they tried to force it into the franchise, and they
Yeah.
they didn't they didn't need to do that. They obviously were trying to play off of the success of the franchise and kind of the notoriety that it had attained to get people's butts in the seats or whatever to watch
Mhm.
this movie, but didn't need to be that.
I wonder if I wonder if they could have gotten away with like calling Gladiator to the Colosseum, or like
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
that's not
exactly,
directly
exactly.
tied
The
to it.
Fighter.
Right. Like, because it's obviously that can pique people's interests to a degree, and it is going to be a gladiator type movie, but it doesn't have to be in that franchise. So
Yeah.
yeah. Who
well,
knows? Maybe it was, and then Ridley Scott somehow got involved, and they're like, "Well, let's just call it Gladiator 2 then."
sure, maybe. The thing that I don't like about it is that I feel like it does a because like Pedro Pascal is awesome, I think, in nearly everything he does.
Mhm.
Connie Nielsen is awesome in everything she does, and she's like one of the characters that comes back in Gladiator 2. So she is in the movie, but I almost feel like it does a disservice to people like Pedro Pascal, because Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, and Paul Mescal could have carried Gladiator 2 on their own.
Mhm.
It didn't need to be tied to the overarching, Gladiator universe. It would have been fine. Actually, now that I'm looking at the cast list, I guess they brought back a couple people because Gracchus is in it.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. It could have been its own thing. It didn't need to. I can't believe I can't think of whatever the sci-fi movie was that I wanted to say. Because it's like a good example of that. It's like it could have been its own standalone thing, and they just tried to force it into this bigger franchise, and it would have been fine if it wasn't.
Yeah. But it is something along the lines of Star Trek or Star Wars?
I think so. I think so. I'll think of it far too late for this episode or far too late for this podcast, and maybe I'll write about it. But it's just there's a lot of movies that do that, and I think they're playing on the IP, the strength of the IP. Like this, Elon, but some of the viewers might not know it, that I'm working on an animated series, and I've had a couple meetings with like program directors at a acquaintance that I know works at Disney, and another acquaintance that I know knew somebody that was a program director at Apple TV. And the feedback that I got from both of them is essentially, if it's not based on an existing IP, they're not really that interested, because they want they want some certainty in what they're producing. So like if it's a book series, if whatever they're working on is based on a book series, then they're more likely to greenlight that than they would a brand new property that doesn't have any attachment or anything else, because there's like a baked in fan base. If there's a book already and there's a bunch of people that liked the book, if you're going to make a TV show or a movie based on it, then boom, you're pretty much guaranteed to at least get all those people just based on curiosity alone. Whether they see a trailer or whatever and they decide they don't like it, even the vast majority of those people are going to see the movie just because it's related to the property that they already liked. And that seems to be the norm now for stuff like that. So I can totally see them getting this Gladiator story and being like, we should call it Gladiator 2. People will come see it because it's Gladiator 2. It's not Coliseum or some, generic movie or whatever.
Yeah, man. It's disappointing. That's just how it is nowadays. And
I mean, I don't blame them in one way, because, working as a producer, I feel like stuff is so expensive that making these big giant movies is now ridiculously expensive. Nobody wants to take a huge risk on something that, is already hampered by the fact that it's an original story. But that being said, some of my favorite movies of the last 10 years are original stories, or even the last 15, 20 years. I think when you get a brand new movie from a property that you don't have those expectations for, I think that hits way differently than something where, like Gladiator 2, because I liked the original Gladiator so much, as I'm watching it, I'm constantly comparing it to it. And so it's kind of like that double, no pun intended, it's a double-edged sword, because you're constantly comparing it, but at the same time, that's kind of what the producers and the director probably wanted by attaching it to that property in the first place. They want you to pair them together in your head so that you're viewing them together and setting those expectations, but it does a disservice because you're comparing it to the original.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bit of tangent, but I kind of want to hit on it just real quick. Just how backwards everything is nowadays, because that's how things get greenlit nowadays. Is if it already has a fan base, it's already some sort of existing IP, whether that be a book or, maybe even like a very successful YouTube channel or whatever. That's what you have to have baked in before you could even pitch it to be a series or in the cinema or whatever. Whereas, back in the 90s, original things came out in the theater first. Maybe it was a flop, but then maybe it found life afterwards on physical media. So it's like the physical, nowadays it's the physical book beforehand that will get you the deal in movie theaters.
Mhm.
Whereas back in the day, you would take a chance on a theatrical release and then maybe it finds life in a physical form afterwards. So it's like it's just completely flipped. And like, I don't know, man. I I don't want to like just sound like
You're
some
mourning. You're
crotchety old
mourning.
man,
Yeah, yeah.
like
You're
it was
mourning.
better back in my day. But at the same time, it's like so many good stories could be given a chance if they have a chance to find life after its theatrical run.
Yeah.
Like I wish we could somehow get back to that where you can have just completely original stuff. I mean, there are obviously successes even nowadays, especially whatever the hell they're doing over at A24 is working
Mhm.
because they continue to be like the studio to come up with bizarre ass stories that are completely original with amazing talent behind it and amazing performances. Yeah, it's probably not going to be a box office, top of the charts kind of movie, but it's most likely at least going to make back the money that they used to make it. um, because I love that platform or just that business uh, where you're just taking a chance on tons and tons of small stories instead of taking a gamble on these gigantic tentpole movies that cost $300 million.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
think even to your point, like there's two different things that you can take away from that kind of discussion. One, as you had mentioned, like Gladiator, would a movie like Gladiator be made today even? Because that is not, I mean, we're comparing it to Ben-Hur and talking about all the, kind of callbacks to
Mhm.
Ben-Hur and the type of story it is and everything. But this was an original story. There's no IP that Gladiator
Right?
had back in 2000. So would a movie like this be made today? According to the people that I've talked to in the industry, no, because they would
No.
want something that's already existing and that kind of has that baked in stuff. But then on the other end of it, even to what you're saying, like A24 now is an established production house, if you
Yeah.
will. They've kind of cranked this out. I would, although to a lesser degree, say that Blumhouse has done similar for horror
Sure.
movies
Yeah.
coming up, but you still have this kind of like you're getting these smaller films that are being produced and created by smaller teams with smaller budgets, but then they're getting bought out for publishing rights and for distribution and stuff by the likes of like Netflix and HBO and
Right.
Warner Brothers, where those companies aren't financing the movies ahead of time. The movies, the producers, the creators of the movies are having to find these projects that they're interested in because of the things that you're saying. They found a creative idea or there's a creative premise that they want to back, and then they're making these hoping with fingers crossed that somebody like Netflix is going to come in or somebody like Disney or whoever is going to step in at the last minute and be like, yes, we want to give you $200 million for exclusive publishing, for exclusive streaming and distribution rights to this movie that you've
Mhm.
already made. They've
Yeah.
already made the movie. Whereas back in the day, that wasn't the case. You didn't have these filmmakers making. I mean, you did in a way, I guess. With Ninja Turtles, that was kind of what they were going for. Is
Right.
they were trying to shop around the premise for the movie and didn't get it, so they were like, "Fine, we'll just make it ourselves, and then we'll try to publish it after the fact." And maybe that was the time period that this whole kind of process broke down, and that's when this stuff started. But
Mhm.
now you're seeing, I think, more and more of these like production companies that are just hoping that a streamer will pick them up and
Yeah.
make the money for them, because otherwise you're dead in the water. You're not going to get a
Right.
theatrical run when Warner Brothers, Discovery, Netflix, and these people basically have like a stranglehold on the theater industry. And
Mhm.
then on top of that, from home viewing, you have a stranglehold on the streaming services. You're not going to get those. You're not going to get a Gladiator coming out in 2026, I guess, is what I'm saying. And that
Yeah.
to your point, pains me and saddens me, but I think that the lesson to take from that is not, just give up and not do that. It's more
Sure.
so seek out the physical media companies that are still doing the stuff, seek
Mhm.
out the smaller production companies that are making this stuff, and take a chance, because
Yeah.
unfortunately that's the only way, in at least, both of us are in America. I don't know how many people watch this or are going to watch this outside of America or anything like that, but you vote with your wallet. The
Mhm.
movies you see are the movies you're going to get. The movies you pay for, the movies you give money to are the movies you're going to get. So if you're only paying to see those big tentpole AAA blockbusters, summer big hits, Marvel movies in the theater, then you shouldn't be surprised that the only thing we're getting is movies based on existing IPs where they
Right.
can, recycle the same stuff over and over and over and just give us the stuff that we're already saying this is what we want because this is what we're buying tickets for.
Yeah.
All that to say, buy physical media, buy stuff that you
Yes.
like, because that's
Oh,
that's where they get their ideas from. They're not going to make new movies unless we buy and pay for new original content. So,
yeah. And like it's I just I don't like how, because it's not just um that nobody wants to buy physical media. It's also the fact that as soon as it maybe it gets picked up by a streamer and it's available on a streaming service, a few months after its theatrical run or whatever, but then how much is it getting pushed by that streaming service? Is it
mhm.
on the front page? You never know. It might not be. So like I just think and also you're, because it's run by an algorithm, what is shoved in front of your face is also tailored to your liking. So an amazing movie that maybe you might like but you never knew you would like isn't even on your front page because of the past stuff you watched before. It's like,
Yeah, you got to dig through a lot of that.
yeah, it just it irks
I
me.
will say, I do want to kind of shout out. I think one way to counteract the effect that you're talking about and that we're kind of discussing is I recently volunteered for a film festival here in Arizona that was
Mhm.
all local. Granted, they did have some films that had like a wider national distribution, but for the most part, there were a ton of those smaller movies that they're featuring. The film festival went on for almost 2 weeks and they had screenings every day of that time period, to see that stuff. And I saw a bunch of movies that I don't think I would have seen otherwise. So if
Yeah,
people are interested, it kind of gets what Hidden Movie Club is all about in multiple ways. You're seeing movies in the theater, you're seeing these smaller productions, or at least, but they're by no means small productions. Like some of these still cost tens of millions of dollars to
sure.
create, but you're seeing, stuff that's, I think, being made by smaller groups that is organically, a little bit more organically, I'm not going to say completely organically, but a little bit more organically promoted and growing because
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are seeing these movies and then they're talking to other people and telling them, and they're getting these awards and, and whatnot. And I think a lot of people, it's hard with the amount of content and the amount of stuff that's being produced all the time nowadays for people to find kind of the cream of the crop stuff. If you
Mhm.
just if your entire viewing experience is just based on, for example, the winners that you see or the nominations that you see coming from like the Oscars or the Golden Globes, you're going to miss out on a huge swath of quality films and cool stuff that you can see in a theater, that you're just going to miss completely if that's
Mhm.
only what you're basing it on. So I would really
Yeah.
recommend, if you do like film, not just movies, but if you like film, if you like the kind of really deep, thoughtful stuff, go to a film festival. Seek out what's the closest film festival to you, even if it's not like a huge one, because I
Yeah.
guarantee you'll probably. And again, it'll depend on your tolerance for being able to see stuff that's not great versus stuff that you think is
True.
great.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, there's some stuff that just wasn't my cup of tea, but
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff that I saw that I just genuinely would not have seen if it wasn't presented to me in that film festival format. You know, you
Yeah.
buy a ticket for kind of the whole day, or in some cases, you buy it for the whole week, and then you can go see as many or as few of those movies as you want. It's a cool way to kind of ingest and consume movies that aren't in those big tent pole companies and these big
Mhm.
publishers and streamers and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
if anybody's a cinemaniac, as we like to say, go check out your local film festival, see what's up, go buy some physical movies that aren't necessarily as popular as some of the bigger movies that have been released.
Yeah. Well, that's moral of the story today, folks. Physical media, film festivals.
Vote with your
Uh,
dollars. Vote with your dollars. If you're sick of the
yeah.
big Hollywood productions or the big just, productions that take over everything, the only way to counteract that is to vote with your wallet.
Netflix just raised their prices $2 again,
Cancel that.
like a week or two ago.
Can't. I'd be curious how many people, because I know a ton, like most of my friends and even me and my wife included, like we'll sign up for a streaming service for like a month or two and like catch up on all the stuff that we haven't seen. And then we'll
Mhm.
cancel that and like sign up for the next one, watch a bunch of that stuff, just kind of catch up.
Yeah.
We're not, we don't necessarily have that like FOMO of needing to see stuff right when it releases.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I would say, especially lately, I'm almost like hesitant to watch stuff that hasn't finished because I feel like I've been burned too much by shows that started off really strong. Game of Thrones is a great example of that. But watching shows that are just airing for the first time, and I will say I do kind of miss, because there are some shows that I think are really good, where you're waiting week to week, you're talking with friends about it, you're discussing stuff. I like that. I
Yeah.
miss some of that, but when you get to the point where like you get to the end of the show and then they just miss the landing, and then you're like, ugh, I wish I hadn't watched that because it was so unsatisfying at the end. Like waiting till
Yeah.
they're done with the season or the show completely or whatever, and then watching it afterwards has been a much more fulfilling experience, I think, for us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
Bro Cinco was saying that Amazon are raising their prices by $4, removing 4K from the lowest tiers. But that's on top of paying for Prime
Yeah.
every year. So like
Yeah.
they everybody who has the landscape has shifted so much because we were promised all these things when streaming became the norm, 2016 or whatever it was. It's been 10 years pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And now all these streaming companies are like, oh, maybe advertising does help, move the money train along.
Oh, a
Because
ton.
everyone promised just pay for the subscription and never pay for ads. And now, oh, you done realized that it's not a sustainable business model.
Well, it's kind of the death by a thousand cuts. Like, okay, now I'm gonna go on a rant because you kind of had. So Elon knows this. If anybody that knows me, I typically don't. We don't. My wife and I don't. We don't shop on Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have Amazon Prime. I don't have that stuff because um, I kind of saw the writing on the wall and saw, Amazon's incredibly convenient. They'll bring you whatever you want, sometimes in less than 2 hours, but most of the time overnight or whatever in the various kind of crevices of it. And as somebody who loves physical media and steel books, especially,
Mhm.
I explicitly tried to buy that stuff from non-Amazon places, but I felt like I was the only person in the cosmos screaming that out to the heavens and nobody's listening. Everybody's
Yeah.
buying it on Amazon because without fail, Amazon is cheaper. Anytime I
Yeah.
would buy a steel book, I was always overpaying for the steel books or anything that I buy just to avoid Amazon. That's just an inconvenience that I have accepted in my life as not being able to buy that stuff. Well,
Yeah.
now, what, 2 years later? Because really, I think I started noticing it right around COVID.
Mhm.
So maybe like 2, 3 years after that started, and it's been 3 years since then. So 6 years total since
Yeah.
COVID-ish. Best Buy doesn't sell steelbooks anymore. Target is winding down their steelbook sales. Walmart is winding down their steelbook sales. Nearly all pre-orders now that are coming out for steelbooks are Amazon only. And even if you're ordering from other companies, like you'll still have your Shout Factories, your Grooves, your Arrow Video, those boutique places that specialize in steelbooks and collectors movies and stuff like that. But outside of that small niche, the majority of movies that you can get now in Blu-ray, steelbook, whatever, are almost all exclusive to Amazon. And there's just literally no way to get it from somewhere else. In fact, I have purchased things recently that I purchased directly from the publisher or distributor, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And when it gets delivered to my house, it's an Amazon padded envelope, or it's in an Amazon
No
box.
way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Well, if you look at God, who was it recently? There's a company I just bought something from, and when you go to buy it, it's an Amazon checkout thing, and it's the Amazon store.
Wow.
So it's like you can't get away from it now, but that's because nobody voted with their wallet back then, and so now we're stuck. Now literally you have to give Amazon your money if you even want to be in this hobby, or if you want to collect this stuff. Again, unless you limit yourself exclusively to stuff like Arrow, which, I love Arrow. Arrow's releases are great. I think the fact that they produce brand new content for these old movies in these collector's editions and do interviews with the cast and crew is awesome. But most, we've kind of lost all the things that got me into the hobby to begin with. There's very few Blu-rays that have director's commentaries and special features and stuff like that. And now, especially when you can only buy them from Amazon, it's really disheartening. Okay, end rant.
Well, that's all the time we have for anyway. So that was good. Perfect timing.
Back to Gladiator. Great movie. Loved it. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah. Man, if you haven't seen Gladiator in a while, boy, give it a watch. If you have, it on disc or whatever, pop it in. I have no idea if it's streaming anywhere right now. You can look that up on Just Watch, the Just Watch app. That's usually what I go to. But yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed watching it on the plane.
How many Ninja Turtles? Out of 4 Ninja Turtles, how many Ninja Turtles?
Oh, 4 for sure.
4 Ninja Turtles out of 4, right on.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty high, like 9.5 out of 10 on Gladiator. It might even be higher than that, but I don't want to get into like the quarter points or like decimal points. I'll just stick with the halves.
Right. Fair enough. Do we know what we're doing next week? I don't even think we decided what we're doing next week.
I don't think we have decided what we're doing next week.
Okay. Well, stay tuned to the Substack newsletter. I might hiddenmovieclub.com. No, hiddenmovieclub.substack.com.
Yeah, that still works. Hiddenmovieclub.com works. It'll take you to Substack.
Oh yeah, true. Hiddenmovieclub.com also has some links on it you can click. And just keep on trucking. We'll save that for November. As cliche as that is, I think we'll save V for Vendetta. Oh, till November. That would be a good November one anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, that way I'm probably going to send one out sooner rather than later, just so you can have a chance to watch what we're going to be watching next week. And hopefully we'll have Brad on next week like normal. He couldn't be there last week. So after the
giveaway. Next week is after the credits, which means that there is a Blu-ray disc giveaway. So you can either get the film we watched beforehand or a gift card. I mean, you win a movie. What's there to lose? You win a movie. If you only subscribe for 1 month, it's like $5. You can cancel right after if you win.
Yeah, peeps.
I hope you don't, but you could vote with your wallet. Vote with
your wallet. Again, that's the mantra for today.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
If you're listening to the podcast
the support,
version.
The chat.
Yeah, you're all cool. And
Gladiator Power.
Gladiator Power, physical media. Go see a film festival.
Yeah.
All right. See you, peeps.
Do it now.
Have a good